All right, and welcome everybody to the Org Topologies session with guest speakers. And today we have wonderful Mauro Sacchi from a wonderful company and a wonderful journey of change. And I'm really looking forward to learn as much as I can from this story. If you're watching this streaming live, please, you're welcome to post your questions, and then I will be reading them and asking them to Mauro. There'll be some slides, and then after the slides are over, there will be a Q&A. So I know that Mauro, you're working in a company which has done a very interesting, deep, significant change. And I think our listeners and readers actually would like to understand where you're coming from and why change and how to change. And I guess this will be a very inspiring talk for a lot of people. So thank you for being with us today.
Good afternoon to you, Alexei, and good afternoon to all those who are on the line. It's a real pleasure to be here. So I feel privileged, and so thanks for inviting me. I very much look forward to sharing our experience and also to receive questions and engage in meaningful conversation from which I usually learn always a lot. So thanks again, and look forward.
Yeah, let's go.
Very good. What I will bring here, what I will share to you is a journey that we have been engaging for now several years from what I wrote here, renting resources to driving strategy. We try to shift basically our product development activity to be much more business oriented and customer value oriented. And I will share some material so that we are having then something to support us during the conversation. Please let me know when you see it.
Yes, it's there. All good.
Lovely. But first thing first, I'll give you at least a very quick background of myself and the company I represent. So my name is Mauro Sacchi, as Alexei said. I'm originally Italian. I'm located in Finland, and at the moment I'm heading a department called Digital Product Development, which is in charge of the digital R&D, basically, of our product for the life cycle business that we have in Wärtsilä. Life cycle business of digital nature and primarily rooted to the core and the mainstream business that we have in our company, from which technology then we built a lot of go-to-market strategy, which is engine technology, so transforming energy into power. I will have to give you a bit of a background for this because otherwise it's going to be a bit harder to understand the context where then this change has been happening. So first of all, keep in mind that Wärtsilä is a multinational, it is a big corporation, and it has been in business for 190 years, and it operates in two of the most foundational industry that are de facto moving many of the activity that are needed by mankind to live and prosper on the planet. One is the maritime business, the other one is the energy sector. We are present pretty much with our solution on 1/3 of the fleet, of the world fleet of commercial vessels, and we are present in 180 countries with power generation. So our bread and butter is really to transform energy into power, as I said, in these two industries. And already I can give you a sneak peek because basically the underlying technology is the conversion of energy into power, and it's a technology that is shared by both applications. So either you are propelling a ship or you are powering a ship that needs electricity or basically thrust in order to move, or you are generating electricity for people. But the underlying technology is the same. And as I said, we are a big corporation, so this is important for us to understand also when we are going to look at our organization, the experience, the shift that we have done, because the environment will help the audience to understand where we come from, and also the traditional aspect that it's important to respect in our company, in our industry. So as I said, we are 190 years old business, and we are over 6 billion euro of net sales per year. We are present in pretty much almost all the countries in the world because maritime and energy sector are very global. We have over 18,000 people around the world. So it's the most international and most complex environment that you can see, and you can then think about when you will see also our transformation. Then if I look a little bit more in depth of what it means, marine and energy, so the two industries, as I say, transforming energy into power for us, the bread and butter is engine technology. Engine technology that is utilizing, in this case, on board of vessels. And both industry, maritime, very globally, they are undergoing quite a lot of push and for us drive even to decarbonize because there are very clear requirements for the greenhouse gases emissions set by the International Maritime Organization. And this, of course, forces the whole industry to shift to alternative fuels that are moving away from carbon fossil even, or anyway mixing then the power generation with other sources of energy like electrification and hybrid, adding energy saving devices, and being able to then really then capture the CO2 and basically lower the emissions. And this creates a lot of complexity for our customers because the technology becomes more difficult to manage, not only from the operational perspective, also from the maintenance perspective. So the customer rely more on company like ours to manage the risk of then operating the asset during the life cycle and securing that they work and that the crew knows how to operate them. In the energy sector, it is similar, except that the engine, the product is not moving on board of a vessel, but it's stationary, it's in a power plant. And in a power plant, then it's usually associated to other form of generating power, which are often renewable, so wind and solar dominantly. As you can imagine, sometimes the wind doesn't blow, and sometimes the sun is how do you say, covered by clouds or the overcast. So we have engine technologies that are kicking in when you need to balance the demand from the grid and compensate also that buffer with energy storage, so battery pack. And the whole balancing of demand and supply happens with quite sophisticated digital products that are then deciding from which generators the power will be produced and given to the grid. So I wanted to give you this quick overview because it's important to understand that first of all, we don't really sell digital product. We embed them into lifecycle business that is rooted core to our main bread and butter, which is transforming energy into power. And we associate it mostly to our ability to sign agreement with the customer to take more responsibility over from our side, because we believe that we can actually deliver that value and take that risk in a more controlled way, because we have a deep knowledge of our product and the process that it takes care of. Then, since we're talking about product development, I also wanted to give you an idea of the money at stake. So this is our public information. So we spend almost 5% of our net sales in R&D. Not all of them, of course, is software. There is a lot of R&D also in the mechanical product, which is obvious for our company. We have 2,500 patents and lots of inventions. So we are consider ourselves an innovator and technology company, and that reflects also in our investment in R&D and also our reliability over the years to come for customers that we are going to be in this industry despite the complexity to serve them for long life cycle. Because keep in mind that the power plant and the ship are usually assets that are operating for 20, 30, 50 years even. So the capital investment is massive, and the horizon on how long the asset is supposed to operate and be up to date and be compliant to all the regulations needs to be taken into account of this time frame that I mentioned. Which makes by itself a very big challenge for our customer and also for us, because the technology that is going to be needed in 10, 20 years to comply at that time simply does not exist today. And not because we are not good at it, but it's simply because the technology advancement is not progressed enough, and the compliance will be raised and raised. So the customer is not only looking for companies that have solutions, but also for companies that are trusted that they're going to develop this solution for the future, because they have the track record of having it done so far. So now this is a very brief overview of our business. And now I'll jump a little bit more on what our product is and to give then a sense of the type of shift that I mentioned as a Kickstarter of our time together. So let's go back to ships and power plants. I'll have to spend a little bit of time here because it can be a bit complex. So this is almost an architecture design at a very high level. But if you think about it, we have industrial equipment, so machinery that sits on board of a vessel or on a plant. It could be, now I'm talking about primarily engine. We also have navigation system, but let's focus on engine for the time being. A machinery equipment of all sorts of nature usually has an automation and control system. The automation and control is something that runs primarily for one function, to secure that that product fulfills its primary purpose in safety manners. So from an engine perspective, for example, if you think about big ships, how they operate, having a loss of power or having not a responsive ship can be a real hazard. Also on the power plant side, they are considered strategic critical infrastructure for a country to provide electricity wherever it's needed. So having unreliability on this type of asset is almost a no-go. So there is always a redundancy built into the system, etc. And the automation and control system is usually a deterministic system, and it's sitting within the product itself. And its primary purpose is to secure that the product does work, it does its primary function. So whatever is built next to it cannot jeopardize this primary function. And that part, therefore, needs to be then developed and deployed on a separate type of architecture, which is then built for a different purpose. And I'll get to that one now. So next to that automation and control, there is a whole array of solutions that are deployed from really being close to the automation and control, what we call edge solutions. So edge computing, this sits on the edge, which means on a ship or in a power plant. Or solutions that are instead sitting on a cloud, so that they're more available from the office. That, of course, requires a data pipeline in the middle. So, and that, of course, doesn't get done for free. There is no free lunch on this one. It requires a lot of work from securing that from asset, especially if you think about ships that are sailing in the middle of the ocean and rely only on satellite connectivity. You get a consistent flow of data and information at the hertz level, so really high frequency, and back, so where you can also then push back something and connect to the asset from the office. So this infrastructure then is necessary for whatever type of solution that are built on the cloud, that are then given to people either at the office space on our side, so our experts, or on the customer side to monitor their fleet of either ships or power plants. And these are the two entry points. So you have a user, customers that are connecting at the office, and user from the customer side that are connecting from the edge, so from the sites. And these two roles, these two personas, I would call, have different roles. So if you go on the site, safety is a must, and that's priority. If you go on the office, safety, of course, is a must, but then the priority for them becomes more efficiency, for example, or optimization of which route are you taking or how you're operating your plant. And so these different personas sometimes needs different feature, but the architecture of the product is pretty much the same. And very important also to understand that we do deploy solution on both sides, so customer can access them both, and that there must be certain unified customer experience in order to provide a similar outcome and similar user experience to facilitate the communication between those people who are sitting on a ship or on a power plant and those at the office. Now, when we talk about then the product or the scope of work of an organization that does digital product development, we are talking primarily at the architecture of what you see here in this colored bubble, orangish color. Those are all components of the same product. And mark my word, because I'm not saying this in a superficial way. So I mean it in a quite deep way. So we tend to look at the whole as a one product, and everything is a component today. But it was not always like that. And that's where our journey shift starts, and I will guide you through it using the org topology approach, because it's a fantastic way to describe not only where an organization is, also where its goal would ideally be, and manage that communication that is necessary in order to position it. So it's not only about the journey, but it's also about the conversation that one needs to have with colleagues and management in order to secure that the wish is also backed up by a proper mandate. And when one can visualize and iterate with stakeholders, with colleagues, even with customers, on where to position an organizations and why, then the conversation happens in a much more constructive and smooth way. And so, and this approach with Org Topology is spot on for that. So, to set the agenda of what actually we wanted to share with you, we wanted to drive digitally enabled solution to add value to the customer, and de facto shift from being more on the resource topology part to an adaptive topology, which means doing and directing archetype to driving archetypes. And that is easier said than done. And I guess everyone on the line who is familiar with this will probably recognize what I share with you. And it's not a surprise that the starting point was directing and doing, because you need to think also the industry where we come from. It's an industry that it's very traditional, and it's good that it is very traditional, because the two businesses we're working on are cornerstone of what mankind needs in terms of power generation and transportation of goods. So there is a lot of focus on reliability, and the change is taken very cautiously and for a good reason. But I will guide you through this. And please, Alexei, by the way, interrupt me anytime, because I usually go on quite of a flow on my own, and there is a lot to digest here. So if there is any question that you want to ask or anything that is coming from the audience, I'm more than happy to pause a second and then answer before I continue to add more and more information.
Yeah, just maybe to give a heads up for people who haven't seen these kind of topologies and maps before. So in our topologies method, we distinguish three different topologies, and none of them is better than the other, but they serve different purposes. So on this picture, on the slide, you have the resource topology. This is where you have doers, typically people with a very narrow mandate on skills and scope. So typically people who do some kind of tasks and don't really have a big picture. And then, of course, on top, you have managers, coordinators. We call them the directing archetypes, who actually see the bigger picture and try to make sure the doers do the work. And of course, these people, the doers, they are treated as resources. And that's where I guess the story of Wärtsilä started. And the third topology, it is an adaptive topology. That's where you merge these two groups of people and help everybody see everything as the product. As Mauro has mentioned, there is another topology in between the second topology, which is a delivery topology. And I'm not sure, Mauro, if you're going to mention this, but I assume you would explain your journey from a resource to adaptive topology. And I guess you skipped the delivery topology, jumping right into adaptive with a less huge approach. Am I correct?
You are correct, yes. And so that's why I wanted to set the scene with this slide here. Although you will recognize that from my experience shared, that absolutely there is a bit of a push and pull between the driving and delivering. And but okay, I don't want to anticipate too much, otherwise I'll give it up all. So yeah, good. But then let's jump into it, and I'll share this experience how it started. First of all, when I joined, you need to take into account that digital development, which is dominantly software, is emerging in company like ours as an extremely important element for delivering value to customers. If you go beyond the automation and control, which has been there for decades, however, the software that is additionally built to give that extra kick in terms of efficiency, performance, detecting potential failure, reliability, is something relatively novel. And when I say novel, even if it has been around for, I don't know, 5-10 years, in the history of this company, which is 190 years, it's like an infant, if maybe a toddler who started to learn how to walk. So that's the analogy here. And so the first very cornerstone step is to recognize that software engineering is not something that is down the food chain as an activity that can be outsourced or just simply be told what to code. It's something that needs to be included as simply another discipline of engineering around the same table where people are looking at the problem or the opportunity to solve or to chase for the customers and for our company. And it might sound obvious, but it's already quite of a mental barrier because it's not an outsourced task, but it's instead another colleague with different set of competencies that should be looked at as one team. This mindset shift basically the word service provider to R&D. So in one, you are basically acting customer vendor. So, hey, I have a problem. I want to actually code something. I ask somebody to code it or to do software, and then I get back the results no matter what. In the other one, instead, you are doing strategic R&D together. And then you look at how are we going to solve this problem. Sometimes it might need software, sometimes it might need less software and more mechanical work. Sometimes there is no mechanical or software at all. It's maybe way of working. So you're looking at this more holistically. And on that respect, it also changed the dynamic with people because, and now I underline the word people, the title says resources, but for those who know me, also within the company, every time somebody says resources, I usually say, oh, you mean people. I'm not very fond about the word resources, especially in software-centered businesses, because software is a knowledge creation process and it relies, 99% on people, although there might be hardware design and working, operating is still people, really very much about the people company, the dynamic of the people and teams. And people are people, not on resources. So I'm very keen about that. Then going back to our story, when I joined, I found an environment that was receiving requests from multiple different, I would call it directing archetypes. The reason is simple because the organization that are built around industry like ours are very often capital intensive, and they are built around the concept of product, and especially for those that come from a heritage of manufacturing, a product is something physical, tangible that is done within a specific location in a factory, and that becomes an internal organization that is dealing for that product in terms of financial terms. So, for example, usually it's called P&L, profit and loss. And most of the company in the industrial space are usually divided in multiple profit and losses that are either working with the same product or are dissecting the same product from different phases of its life cycle. Typical is that you are looking at the product when it's built and sold for the first time. and other part of the organization that are usually look at those products that are already being sold during their life cycle, the 20 or 30 years that are operating, because it's a different business model. It's more about parts, maintenance, field service, etc. But what does this create for an organization that does R&D? It creates a one-to-many relationship. So you end up having many different roles that are from the directing archetype, competing for investment capacity, basically, of product development, so what the people do, in order to then fulfill their own specific needs. And it creates quite of a stretch. And when I started here, I found out that there was quite a lot of fragmentation. So how did it work? It works so that basically the product development was done by individual teams. Each team had a product owner. Product owner then were reporting to chief product owner, and chief product owner were in connection directly with so-called middle management. So people responsible for profit and loss in our company, who were then giving basically priority and request to be developed. So it was a very service provider approach. The couple of challenges, of course, as you can see here from our effort here to map it on the Org Topology map. So first of all, the customer is quite distant. And I intentionally, by the way, put the customer here, Alexei, because I had some also reflection about the customer in the next step. Then the customer is in touch with the so-called middle management of the people who are working in those product lines, as we have them. The product line are having a fragmented view of the customer operation, because each one of them takes care of only one part of it. So, and that's the reason why we didn't put them on the whole business. From an organization perspective, only senior leadership, which is on top of middle management, has a broader end-to-end view of how the business works, which reflects also a quite traditional hierarchical view. It's not a negative term in this case. It's simply a matter of fact. In many companies, especially industrial, it's quite normal to operate at that. Then from the development perspective instead, then you see archetypes that are more on the doing part. So, and it's slightly capability, but primarily really on the task basis, especially when we went into product owners and teams that were really basically receiving a list of requests from the middle management passed through the so-called chief product owner. And on top of that, we also had a role called chapter leads, because the initial starting point was modeled from the Spotify experience, in which these chapter leads are basically a resource pool of similar competence. So, for example, a chapter of data science, a chapter of front end, a chapter of back end, and so forth. And then the people were in multi-skill team that were capable of developing part of the product that was at the time considered separate products in isolation from each other, dominant in isolation, and none of them had the possibility to work on the end-to-end. So now, what are the problems here? First of all, because of the type of connection with the middle management, there was a lot of project management mindset. And this is actually perfectly fine in our type of industry, because if you think about it, when you build a power plant, it is a project. And it's good that it's managed as a project, because it's a one-off endeavor to build something from scratch, from foundation all the way up. But then when you build the product that are going to be installed inside, either an engine or the software that is needed to manage the plant, a product management mindset is much more suitable, because that product will be also installed in other power plants and also on ships. And there is a lot of similarity, if actually not identical, products that are going to be doing. And developing per project is a risky business, because then you might very easily end up in customization or bespoke development that creates a major challenge then in terms of lifecycle maintenance and ability to then also respond to changes. So this is a first step. And look, as I said, it's not right or wrong. So certain things are great to be managed as projects. Some others should be done as a product. We should just be respectful and mindful of what is best suitable for one of the methodology versus the other one. If we just do one for the sake of harmonization. But that part was at the beginning a challenge because our businesses come from a project nature. And that was the attempt was, or the natural behavior was to reflect that into the way we do also digital product development. Then lack of agility. So if you can imagine that every team has basically its own backlog and it has its own connection to a specific part of the organization that has a compartmentalized view of the life cycle, the value stream of the customers, you end up having basically a conflicting priority if you try to look at the whole picture, because every team say, hey, I have my backlog, I have my set of priority, and I already made commitment to my users, my customers that I am receiving requests from to deliver that. And what problem does this cause? The main problem is that, first of all, teams are very often told what to do, so they're really on the task basis, but also seeing none of the team is working end to end, and the line from the directing archetype is coming from a very specific siloed view of the customer value stream. It ends up creating complexity or difficulty in terms of agility of how refocus effort of teams on priority that might be more important in one of their backlog than the other one. So in plain English, I had the experience when I joined that one of these teams was working on one specific, at the time they called it product, that was really a burning platform. It had really needed a lot of attention, and it would have needed much more investment. And the only way to fulfill that was to simply hire more people, hire more team within that conscribed domain. When I asked what for me was a basic, simple question to all the other product owner at the time we have, who else can actually help this product owner and team? Everyone said either we don't know how to work on that part of the product, or we have different priority and therefore we cannot actually do anything. Even if, from my perspective, when we compare priority and value, yes, they had their own priority, but they were not in terms of value comparable to the challenges that this one team was facing. There is actually a fantastic video on, if I'm not mistaken, I'll say it's on the LESS website, that is displaying the challenge of having multiple product owner and teams with walls in between. This is exactly the video that I usually show internally also in our company to demonstrate this case. Then last but not least, I think it's quite clear already when you look at the Org Topology map that the teams are distant from the customers. So if you have a service provider approach, you end up being a IT delivery center, and basically somebody else is discussing with the customer on what the problem is, and innovating or designing solutions, and then passing over orders, basically solutions, to people who are supposed to kind of code it. And why do I have personally a problem with that? It goes back to what I was trying to explain before about the fact that software engineering simply is another discipline of engineering, and they should work together at the same around the same table. I keep on saying that when you are trying to address a customer need and try to figure out what the problem is or what the opportunity is, a mechanical engineer cannot expect to be knowledgeable in software just because they have built an Excel the day before. And at the same time, a software engineer cannot expect it to be knowledgeable in combustion technology because they read how it works on Wikipedia the day before. So I keep on saying to people, guys, you need to kind of respect each other, build a bridge. You both need your competence equally at the same level to work against the customer. You cannot pass it down in a sequential order, because if you build software according to requirement written by mechanical engineer, most of the time, actually, you are building solutions that are either not needed or they are not the right approach to solve the problem that originally you're trying to solve. On top of that, we need to think in software also to scale it. So even if you have cracked a fantastic algorithm in, I don't know, in a client tool from the engineer, even in MATLAB from an engineering perspective, when then you transfer it into a software that needs to scale on the cloud, you also need to think of the consequences of maintaining it, the cloud cost to run it. So it's a totally different ballgame when you need to build something that is also meant to run in a different technology stack and environment. And that's why different competencies are needed in a team to understand how to do it properly. But this was our starting point, and with the problem that I phrased here, and it was not optimal because we were not, basically, we were not able to respond to the right priority. We were not able to build a software that scale in an easier way. We were developing a lot of things also that were not necessarily what the customer really needed or obvious value. And we had difficulty to manage priority. So the middle management that is in this directing archetype, all of them were saying, hey, we are not getting enough tractions here. And they were saying, you need to prioritize, you need to prioritize. And I say, okay, but how can I prioritize if we are having this silo in between the teams? So what did we do? And now I'll go to the next slide. Well, I changed the narrative of you need to prioritize with we need to prioritize. So you guys need to agree on what is best for the company beyond your individual interest. And that was by itself a groundbreaking approach because, first of all, it introduced a new strong role, a role of a product owner. And it created the ambition that our team would go into this driving archetype. Now, this is what we desired when we started this journey. And I will share later how it is today. But let me explain why we designed like this. First of all, because we had the need, as I said, to mitigate multiple different competing requests from customers, from our internal users, and being able to put them in a priority order where we could create the needed dialogue to agree on what goes first. So the move of having one product and one product owner was fundamental because it created a broad product thinking, and it created one point of contact, the product owner, who would then deal with the complexity of the customer and stakeholder map. And per se, if you look at our picture, that product owner has by itself as a role a broader view of the product than any of the individual business units that are sitting only on part of it. It's actually quite a unique position because although maybe in the organization ladder, that role is not that high up, still has more visibility of the whole product compared to the individual businesses that only interest in their part. And that by itself creates a bit of an unsettlement. But then the good news here is that because of this approach, the middle management part created roles called product managers to start thinking of the product not as a project, not as a list of requests, but more starting to think in terms of product management. Hey, we need to have actually an idea of what the product is, what vision we want to have, what roadmap we want to have, and not just shoot request by request in a transactional manner. So, and that was already a good move because it simplified a lot the stakeholder map. So instead of having multiple people requesting, we had actually somebody taking the hat of product managers, helping us to define what to do. And so, as I said, then we had one prioritized backlog, and that created the beginning of I would call it the prioritization friction dance or something like that, where basically the product owner would sit regularly with all the parties, often also with customers, and take the input and try to mitigate what is most important, create it back the request, and you need to actually be able to assess the value of the request, what is actually that we are trying to achieve, why this product needs it, how much value it is, and then putting people also in competition, because at the end you need to make a decision. We have this amount of investment, where do we place it? And that requires dialogue and it requires a decision on one product. Then we desire to take teams on a totally different level. First of all, in a driving archetype, the teams really need to own the whole product. They need to work directly with customers. They need to have a much more end-to-end perspective. And it's a stretch, actually. It's not an automatic jump from working more on a task basis to a driving archetype. To be very open with you, this is something that I personally underestimated, how much stretch and requirement it puts on people to grow and to take much more ownership. Many people actually like it very much because they can express themselves, they feel more valued as individuals, as teams. Some others are reluctant to do it, and they prefer actually to be more on the how do you call it, on the task level. So I would prefer to actually be more be told what to do. The beauty of this is that the word that is shifting up is not individuals, but it's teams. So the teams needs to be end-to-end. The multi-skill needs to be in the team. It's not requested that every individual is able to do everything, and every individual needs to be driving. It's the team as an entity that needs to do it. So it doesn't create an equal stretch to everybody. In a team, some people will emerge as more, hey, I want to talk more with customers. Some people will say, oh, I prefer to actually code more or develop more. And that's perfectly okay as long as the team is driving. But in order to create this shift, we also then empower teams to be more self-managing, which means that they needed to get their own responsibility and ownership feeling. So product owner disappear from the teams. So there is only one product owner. Teams are self-managing, self-organizing. The only thing is that it's a must that we follow the one backlog. So we work on what the backlog demands. But then the teams are clarifying with user, with customer directly, what actually needs to be achieved in order to solve the problems through refinement and through user interactions. And the teams are also empowered to learn. That's why in the desire move, we put them on this stretched, expanding type of on the axis, an expanding role, because one of the key features for becoming a driving team is to be learning. So you need to learn. You need to learn to operate end-to-end. You need to learn how to work on the whole product. You need to learn how to work with multiple customers. As I said, that doesn't go by itself. We recognize that, as I say, underestimated this. We recognize that we needed more help. So we invested very heavily in Scrum Masters, Agile coaches. This is for me, it's an equivalent. So there is no difference. So a purely Agile coaching, by the way, Scrum Master is not a secretary or a coordinator or a troubleshooter. It's an Agile coach for the team performance. And then we invested into a role called people management, which relieved all the chapter lead from the direct line management of the teams, the people, individual. And we created a function that would be fully focused on supporting people as individuals from the personal level, really, and interface with what being still part of the corporation demands. Because when you're a part of a corporation, you need also certain line management duty that are actually very good for the people. They need to be interpreted for a domain like this one. And now we have people who are dedicated for that role. They have a strong experience also in human resources, so they are perfect for the role. And it's if you're, by the way, more interested, there is a presentation of how we do this function in the last LESS conference that was done in Madrid, if I'm not mistaken, Alexei. There is a video recording for that, so by our people managers.
Yeah, I will link this video and the other one you mentioned to the comments of this one. Thanks a lot.
Lovely. Okay, but as I said, this is our desire move, and between having how do you say, a desired state and a Z state. There are a lot of miles to walk, and what happened at first when we started to open up how do you say, the ambition that we had for the people. The reaction was, first of all, on the positive side, that people started to understand what we have, because if you can imagine, in a more silo view, nobody really understood the whole picture. So they understood, okay, we have much more cooking here than what we expected. None of our colleague really understood the full magnitude of it. It unleashed the full potential of many individuals, if not even teams, who are having now more possibility to contribute. I mean, keep in mind that many software engineers are having, some of them are multiple degree in computer science, but also in physics. Some of them have PhD in mathematics. So it's quite silly to have people with such a competence level being only asked to code. It's something that people can then contribute much more. But of course, it needs an investment in learning, it needs an investment in trusting teams to emerge. And this also created a lot of the question marks on how will it work in relation to the directing archetypes. And now I'll go to the reality, where we are and why we are where we are. But before I move, because I don't notice I forgot one point, and I have it also on the next slide. You might be surprised to see the customers in a position on the map that is lower than teams and product owner.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. That's pretty interesting.
Look, I don't mean to be offensive, of course, here, but it's the reason why I put it here. And I would be glad to actually be challenged also to the Q&A that we are going to have, is because if you think about what I tried to explain at the beginning, we are dealing with a product that is core to the mainstream technology that we have, which is transforming energy into power. You call it an engine. And that technology is applied to two different industries, marine and power plants, so ships and power plant. And of course, in each one of the two industries, the customer would be on the farthest top side of the map. But when you're looking at the product that is needed, that is fulfilling with the same technology two different industries, the teams and the product owner who are seeing both the marine customers and the energy customers are in a position where they can actually connect the dots on what is synergetic. And a marine customer doesn't necessarily know what the power plant customer needs, and vice versa. So a customer in these two industries within the scope of our product has a partial view of the business, because the product fulfills both. We are able to connect to engine and monitoring the engine and their reliability through detecting potential failure with the same product in both marine and energy. So that's why I put the customer here and I put a question mark, where shall we place it? Because from a perspective of the product, we are seeing both industry, but the customer in each one of the two sees only their industry. So it's a partial view of the product. I don't know if I give me a thumbs up or down, Alexei, because it's something that I got a revelation when I was when we along the journey we tried to document it with the Org Topologies map, and I found it a topic worth to open up.
I think I think it can be true, especially in a large product like yours, especially when customers have different expectations. They don't care about the whole product. They want one specific solution maybe for the thing. So customers are in this partial business zone on the map, because again, they don't want the whole thing. They just want the part from your perspective that actually just satisfies their need, and for them is the whole solution, is the real solution. But in your change, you can make teams even more, advanced to that. You can make them versatile to work on the whole product, no matter which specific customer features are they working on. So I guess this makes sense.
Okay, I'm glad that you rephrase exactly what I was trying to convey. So it's a matter of perspective, of course, but it's one way of seeing it. I think for the audience here, what is important to note that a customer might be interested exactly in only one part of what the product does for their specific usage. And while the teams are working on the whole product and they actually see also multiple customers, and for that reason, they have even a broader visibility of at least this specific product that we deal with. So. Okay, but then let's go back to let's go forward to the situation of today, because as I said, this was the desired move, and I want to cover that as last, and then I would like to engage in conversation with you all. Hopefully, you have a question for me, and you, Alex, but also the audience. I'll tell you now where we are today. Give me a second. Yeah. So today, as you can see, how do you say, the dynamics are slightly different compared to the previous slide. I mean, first of all, the word friction here. This desired move created friction over two things. One is prioritization, and the other one is mandate. So on prioritization, basically the approach of having one product created the frictions between the product development organization and the various parties that are having to then decide what goes first, what goes after, because they are in competition. And they're in competition even in terms of financial performance, which is quite natural in every big company. And one thing to note in this picture is that the role of middle management phased away, because the role of product manager emerged more strongly in our company, which is a very good thing, because now the counterpart between the product owner and the product managers, so the interface between product owner and product manager start to work very well. So the product owner is, how do you say, owning the overall product, and it created this continuous dialogue with the product managers in order to focus on the highest possible value of the company. Why do I use the word friction? Because it is a friction, and it's a positive one, because through that friction, through that dialogue, the outcome is that there is a decision on prioritization, and it's sometimes tiring, it can be even painful, it's necessary. So that's why we describe that as a positive friction, and in every avenue we try to explain that it's not an initial effort, it's not a one-off experience that you need to go through before things settle. It's going to last forever. As long as you have competing requirements, that prioritization discussion will never go away. So the mindset needs to be that we need to look at it positively, and we need to learn how to deal with it in a constructive way. It's not meant to go away. The moment it goes away, it means that we are dividing silo in order to avoid that conversation. And that's, again, bad for the whole company. So we are happy to have that positive friction. Then positive friction over mandate, because having more maturity on this product management also creates, in this case, a positive friction with the teams on basically calibrating the position of this organization on the Org Topology map. And that's actually where the Org Topology map is an excellent way to iterate and debate, because there is no right and wrong. It's about calibrating where actually the archetype should be in order to find the best balance for the moment and the maturity of an organization as a whole, and communicating so that everybody understands. So pushing for us, the team, too much on the driving archetype created friction that then reassess a little bit the situation. You asked me about the delivering part, more towards the delivering part. Every now and then, with teams that are starting to have a broader view of the product. And this was not only the results of the friction with product management, it was also the results of the growth of the team. So we cannot expect to go from an archetype that is in the doing part to a driving part in a matter of few years. So when people ask me, when are you going to be done with this transformation? My answer usually is never. When they ask me, okay, but what's the timeline that you set for yourself? I say, well, I'm now 47, so I have 15 more years of career in order to be able to help this transition to go from doing to driving. And then I will pass the baton to someone else. And I hope to leave a good legacy of more driving architect than doing. So it's not a long journey, it's not a short journey, and it requires leadership that is in for the long game. And that's important also to give stability to the people. So this friction is important because it calibrates the organization. It creates an environment where people understand more what to expect from each other, and also the value of having more driving archetypes and what it means for the other archetypes. So this, for example, shifted product management from being too much on the directing, but being more also on the driving side. And ultimately, it becomes one team despite the organizational structure where people are, because there is dialogue. People go together to the customer. They work at the equal level. They are not just in passing order. I'm directing, you're doing. So that's the idea. And in reality, that's where we are today. So with the Scrum Master and the people manager helping the team, focusing more on the delivering part, and the teams emerging really, and some of them are actually more mature. So if I would have mapped it team by team, this would have been a bit up and down, which is perfectly normal. So, and then another thing that happened is that this type of friction and positive dialogue created transparency on problem and opportunity rather than solution. So the conversation with the customer and colleague became more strategic. So instead of being passed over task to do or solution that might be even wrong, we are now sitting together and figuring out what kind of problem we have, what kind of solution do we have, and we do it together through refinement. So it's a continuous process of working together to understand actually what needs to be done and putting the best mind around the table. Sometimes it works better than others, depends on the individuals, the maturity, so that even at the individual level, the interpreters, and also the domain of knowledge and the confidence of teams and product manager to actually master it and bring their contribution to the table. So it's not a perfect mechanism. We don't expect it to be perfect, but only through those iterations one can actually improve. So the important thing is that the mechanics are there in place. And last but not least, the important thing also that through now 3.5, 4 years, the expectation towards the teams is much more clear. So people know that this is a learning organization and it wants to be on the expanding part of the map. So people are expected to learn. They're expected to stretch beyond their comfort zone or their technical specialization for the best of the team. So the team as a whole needs to be driving, as I said before. The individual, though, expected to be able to contribute to the success of the team, even if then this goes beyond their comfort zone or something that they maybe don't know. We want to give an opportunity for people to learn. On the other end, people also need to pull that opportunity. And so they need to then be willing to learn and maybe sometimes do an activity that is needed by the team that is not necessarily what they truly love, but the team needs it for the sprint or 2 sprints, and therefore for the best of the team and the product, we do it. And look, from management perspective, I always make this analogy, it's no difference. So in my role, for example, one might think, okay, you are the manager, no? In an organization like this one, usually it goes on the role as manager. I can guarantee you that very often, if I am a manager, my team is the management team. In the management team, we have a person from finance and control, HR, the product owner, the agile coach, people manager. And sometimes, for example, I need to do a lot more finance and control work because we are in a period where we need to do rolling forecast. And therefore, I put my time into working more with the controller. I'm definitely not a wizard of Excel and financials, but this is what the team needs, and therefore I put myself to serve the team, and as a management team, we are there to serve the teams and the organization, developing the right capability and connection with the other organizations to succeed. And with this, I would like to conclude, because now we mapped our history. Internally, we have much more detailed mapping of how even each individual team is at the moment in terms of maturity and plot on the map. It's much, much easier to engage in conversation when people understand the gist of the map, and to then even have an agreement on where the organization should be, what the mandate should be, and how it relates to other roles that in a big organization will always exist. It's unthinkable to kind of move them all into one. So it's important also to find your own fit, and appreciate also that your colleagues have different roles, and try to make it work for the best of what the organization can accept at the moment. And then, as I said, in the long term, have an understanding of where we want to drive it together. So that's where we are, and so far it has been a very pleasant journey, Alexei. It's a real pleasure to work with the team, with the developer, and see how they grow in this journey. It's a real pleasure also to see the positive friction and deal with them on a daily basis. We have the product, and what we do is installed on like I would say close to 1,000 or more installations. So it's very a very good experience so far, and the journey continues. So.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing the journey. I have a lot of questions. How much time do you have for me?
Well, you booked me for another half an hour, and
So yeah, I think I can easily take the full half an hour. Yeah, so wonderful story, very interesting, a lot of questions on my mind. But first, I would like to, like highlight one very interesting, important point in this presentation. You showed three different org topologies mappings, right? You show how, like, where you came from. Then you showed your perfection state, your vision state, which is pretty bold, I have to say. And you probably know, and because you said it will take you until your entire, career to make it happen. Probably yes. And then you showed your current state. So just to, make sure our audience understands the value of this method, right? In many, many other change methods, approaches, frameworks, you have only one picture. Like this is what you're gonna have when you implement this specific framework. Bam, you've done, you implemented, now you finished. No, actually org change is never done. So I think, Mauro, you can probably, like, every year or so make another snapshot, and then you'll see like what the changes are, what's the diff, and how far you are from the dream state, or maybe that dream state also changes over time because your understanding of the possibilities change. So thank you for showing that clearly, the power of the method, that it helps a company to evolve, thoughtfully, intentionally evolve to the place where it wants to be, it needs to be. And you've mentioned a few things about your personal journey, like what you do as a manager, but just maybe if you can go one level deeper. You've described the journey for the teams, and I still have some questions for that. Would you mind shedding some light on what was the journey for you? Like, what did you have to learn or unlearn and change in order? And by the way, where would you put yourself on the map?
That's a very good question, actually. First of all, comment about what you mentioned about the state and then producing only one map, that I fully agree with you, because this is like a pendulum. It kind of at the beginning goes like an elastic, and you have a dream, and then you go back, and then you see where you are, and you recalibrate all the time. So it's a continuous journey. It will never end, and it's not meant to end. So it's good to have it iteratively done, also because, I mean, we are supposed to work agile, and the same goes for organization. You experiment something, you see if it works, and then you scale it, you expand it. If it doesn't work, you go back to the drawing board and you try something else, right? So it's important to do it regularly. We actually do it even more than once a year, I would say. We do it continuous basis, I would say. I don't know, it happens multiple iteration per year we have, where we are revisiting how we are doing, what we should do, evolving, etc. Then where I should place myself on the map? That's a good question. I wouldn't know. Actually, I would need your help to place it, but I can tell you where I see
Just to
me.
remind you, your LinkedIn profile says you are a product developer.
Oh yes, oh
Yeah.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Because that's what we do. We develop product, and as a matter of fact, by the way, we also activate and we do all the whole life cycle support. So we have the whole circle. So because once the product is out there, it's not only about developing. Also, we need to secure that it keeps on working for the customers. Yeah, I'm a product developer because, in my view, in order to unlock the true potential of people and give space for people to emerge and contribute, the role of leadership needs to change into being more what by cliche would be called servant leader, or anyway lateral leadership, I think goes by the book, where you are more focusing on the organizational capabilities and try to build the necessary condition for the people to succeed, rather than being on the front line troubleshooting directly item. You want to be on the front line with your people, but more to secure the right capability in order to succeed in the environment where they are operating. So my work, because I've been now working for Wärtsilä for 20 years, is primarily to bridge this domain to the rest of the company and provide guidance on how to have the best fit, building bridges rather than building black boxes. And usually in an organizational chart, I'm also quite provocative. I put myself and the rest of management on the bottom. So we don't put ourselves, the typical organizational chart is the person in charge of the organization, then you have the teams. No. We put ourselves on the bottom, and actually the teams are on the top. And we put them as close as we can to actually the value consumers, which are the customers, the users. So those who are consuming the value are on top of the organizational chart. And the teams are as close as possible to that because they're the value producer. The value is produced by the teams, not by the managers. So now I ask you actually a boomerang question. Where would you place me on the map? Because I need some help. Now I describe how I see my role. Where would you put me?
Oh, that's a difficult one. So are you close to the product and you see like the customer problems, or you're closer to engineering and you work with teams? I think it might depend.
I am much more close to what you would call the rest of the company. I would almost describe my role as a corporate API.
Mm,
So I secure that the organization has the right understanding, identity, and it has a fit, and all the aspects of managing a relatively big organization are working properly, so that then the people can have a peace of mind to operate in the way we are trying to make them operate. My interaction with the product and the teams goes primarily by go and see, where I try to learn, because I'm just the manager, I'm not meant to know the product in detail at its best. Actually, the knowledge of how the product is, what works well, what should be improved, it's in the teams and with the product owner. So, and I don't have authority, by the way, to decide what should be in the backlog and what should not be, which creates by itself sometimes a question mark, because the product owner in a line management structure reports to me. But when people escalate, hey, I'm not getting my priority done. Can I get it done? I say, but I don't have authority to say what goes on the backlog. But this person reports to you. So what? So
yeah,
I am more the person who tries to create the right space, time, environment for the organization working according to this principle to operate.
yeah.
Once again, where do you place me?
I actually I have two answers. I think one is maybe quite depressive, and the other one is quite happy. So I start with the first one. So I think you said you don't have like a mandate to decide what goes in. So you are not that high on the vertical axis on the and you don't really do customer facing work. So you do some kind of internal work
Mhm.
that actually puts you quite down low on the map, but it doesn't like it's not really bad because this is what the company wants you to do. They want you to focus on the task. So you might actually be seen at a task level,
Mhm.
being multi-skilled because you understand product and technology
Mhm.
and the business. So you're a multi-skilled, a task level manager
Mhm.
whose task, and now the happy part comes in. You're holding the map. You are holding the map in front of everybody and making them understand where they are. So you are either down there or you are behind the map, depending on
Mhm.
how do you want to say that.
Yeah. I like your interpretation, and I don't see it the depressing picture to be where you describe it, because actually it's, in my view, the right place where the manager of an organization like this should be. Certainly it should be lower than the teams and the product owner in terms of understanding of the product.
Mm.
That's it's not like that. So I'm happy that way where you put me. It's I'm
Yeah,
proud to be there if the product owner and the teams are prospering because of that.
yeah. So you kind of supporting them
Hmm.
from
Yeah.
behind. Yeah, I think a question that we have now, and we will have much more questions like this, is like, hey, you've mentioned that safety is one of these big thing
Hmm.
that your company, like your product, needs to optimize for because this, big ships,
Hmm.
whenever something happens to a big ship, it's all over the news,
Hmm.
and now, like you essentially do some kind of a very advanced agile product development. And some people might have this conflict, like safety regulations, you really need to play by the book. You really need to be really careful and play it safe.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you're actually experimenting with the most advanced way of doing agile with this
Hmm.
multi-team whole product thing. So how do you actually combine those things, help our audience to see how actually agile and incremental development actually helps to increase safety, and or maybe you have some stories where you have some issues in that regard, that like to keep it real.
Yeah, first of all, as I tried to describe at the beginning, in terms of pure product, even not in terms of way of working, we are trying to decouple product and feature that are directly incorporated in the product that is dealing with the primary function of generating power, so where safety comes into the picture, from the product that is interfacing to that. That does what our organization does. So let me put it in concrete terms. No matter how sophisticated feature solution we do, for example, to detect potential failure, if there would be a problem with that specific product, which is what we do in the material that I now shared, it will not jeopardize at all the product that is meant to deal with safety. There is basically a segregation of almost environment, I would say. And the reason is also because of exactly that regulation that you mentioned. So it's quite strict. The way of working in a regulated environment where the primary role is safety is quite strict. So there are a lot of also certification, classification to be achieved. And therefore, the type of work and deployment on new solutions and experiments needs to be done in a very, let's say, controlled way. But this does not mean that there is no innovation. So if I now transpond the way of working of some of my colleagues who are working more on the automation and control, well, I can tell you they also work according to agile principle on automation and control because it is actually a software. And although it's called embedded software because it's on control system, PLC, It's done according to agile methodology, and it's experimental as well. The important thing is to experiment in a safe environment that doesn't jeopardize safety. So it's more about than your deployment strategy when you feel that you're comfortable enough that the experimentation has worked, and you have a so-called acceptance test, at least for the engine, for the product that is operating at the site. And then you are able then to basically deploy your solution on also the other product in the whole install base. Sometimes there are even test installations. So some customers are volunteering to test drive new things, and that is built, for example, with redundancy in mind. So you can have actually products that are at the mechanical level of talking. So you have maybe another engine that is meant for being used for testing purposes. And but then of course you have a redundancy in case something goes wrong, and then you have another engine or multiple engine that can actually compensate the loss of one. I would say it's nothing different compared to what you do on a cloud environment. We have multiple nodes. So you have failover and load balancing, redundancy, it's just done on the mechanical level. And it requires certain, first of all, understanding from the teams of what they're doing and how they are operating, and also how then the product is deployed once it's considered ready and it's passing all the certification, the test for operating in a regulated environment. So, but look, in fairness to the question, it's certainly less dynamic and agile than operating in an environment where safety is not as high priority. I would be lying if I would tell you that it's equal. It's normal. I would say that it's a bit more cost restrictive.
And yet seems you find a way to actually work incrementally and iteratively, even despite those hard regulations.
Yeah.
We have some common friends who work at your company, so I have heard some stories before, and somebody told me, and I'm not sure if they went to see a ship or you have an engine right in one of your offices, but they saw this big, huge engine of a ship, and they were like amazed by the size of it. Like as an engineer, as a developer, like you see this and you're like, oh my God, do I really control this thing? Like each of my line of code can actually, do something, to this thing. So, so you guys are building these engines in the company, right?
Yeah.
And also, okay, and then you mentioned, of course, there is like embedded software and there's edge computing. And then there are these cloud applications for customers to monitor the data from the engines and everything. Like a lot of very different domains of engineering are included, which is, I guess, a very interesting challenge of your company. So could you shed some light? And now I'm going to ask you about specifics of teams. But first of all, like how many teams you actually have? I'm sure you have mentioned that. And how would you describe like which skills are in the teams, and maybe have different team types because of these different engineering domains?
Yeah. First of all, you are correct. There are many different domain of an architecture that are to be considered when you want to deliver end-to-end what I described before. And the starting point was challenging because we had a lot of compartmentalized knowledge, which means also that the teams were having a possibility or competence to work only in part of the product. And now, how many teams we have? We have many. I cannot give you the exact number because it's not for public disclosure, but we have many. So enough to be having multiple locations where we do development.
Like maybe or many.
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 So many. So yeah. This is not a small business, and there is a lot of investment in R&D, as I showed on the slide in general. So it's many. So which of course poses a challenge by itself because when you are moving to end-to-end teams, the complexity of the product is substantial. You are absolutely right. So and we are, I would say, as I said, this is not a short-term journey. It's a long journey. So now we start to see teams who are capable of moving already more confidently on the whole stack of at least data pipeline and cloud, despite all the multiple solutions and technology that were used also because of legacy. Keep in mind, we're a big company, also we do a lot of acquisition. So sometimes having complexity in technology is not created by poor development, it's created by the fact that we acquire a company that has done similar things in a totally different way. And then all of a sudden you try to converge into one product, and then you end up having a huge barrier for having teams being able to operate end to end because the other company has a technology that is similar but not the same. Then things becomes more of a stretch when you go into the domain of also including hardware in the picture. Because then you need to also have, for example, a capability to develop application that can deploy on the edge. They're not running as in the cloud. And if you go even farther away, you start to go on embedded software development on PLC, on control systems. So at the moment, we are targeting to have end-to-end capability all the way from cloud to edge. And we see, for the time being at least, a clear demarcation line between what sits on the edge and what we have on the cloud together as an end-to-end, and what sits instead of an automation and control systems, which is, as we discussed quite lengthily, is primarily focused on the safety of the product. The technology used is quite different, and the functionality and the environment, also the rigidity of the environment, the regulatory aspect are very different. And also I would say the cognitive capacity necessary for having teams being able to also stretch throughout really the whole end-to-end it would be substantially higher, at least for the foreseeable future. So we focus on from edge to cloud. In that respect, we are, I would say, already quite advanced. So we have several teams who are able to stretch more already. Some others are more still in the domain of cloud to data pipeline, while others are from the edge to data pipeline, and they're slowly coming together. But it will take time. It will take time.
So I hear there are very many engineering disciplines involved into making this product work, and your current teams within your adoption are learning to go end to end from edge to cloud.
Yes, that's the idea. Yes.
And
correct.
the other work like embedded, like automation and control, hardware mechanics, these are different teams or different departments, different groups?
Different departments, different groups. So we are, and they are part of the engine. And this is actually a good question because but I would say this is not anything new only from our company. I think every industrial company who is dealing with the addition of digital solution software engineering next to what they have in terms of mechanical product automation and control is probably confronted with the same challenge. The automation and control is sitting a bit in between. So it is software development. On the other hand, the mechanical product wouldn't work without it. So if you're thinking in terms of product and component, is an automation and control a component of an engine or a component of the whole architecture that goes all the way to the cloud? Maybe in the very long run, they're all together in one end-to-end. I would say that for every industrial company, it will take a huge leap of cross-domain knowledge, having teams that are capable of moving truly throughout the whole architecture. It's a fascinating challenge in my view because once we will crack that eventually, it will be like a superpower because then you have the possibility to always look at the problem with competencies that span throughout the really full end-to-end to understand where to address it with what solution. It could be something software, it could be also something mechanical. But sometimes that's the reason why you have also this so-called team of teams, and you need to start working on lowering those organizational barriers and putting together, for example, the people from the automation and control, you call it department, next to the people who are working more from the edge to the cloud, and lowering that barrier, making them feel that they are working together against the same solution or against the same problem, sorry, and they need to find a solution together rather than being told by somebody, you solve this, you solve that. And you going back to your question, what my role is and where I place myself, part of my role is actually exactly to create or to remove organizational distance and make this kind of team of team approach despite of the organizational structure. Because it's unthinkable in big company to always remove dependencies, conglomerating everything in one organizational structure. Sometimes you have to live also with the fact of life that you will have some organizational dependencies. So in my role, it's about how to minimize them, lowering the barrier to be able to put the engineer working with the engineer without too much management hustle in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, so I guess this story and your slides, they actually applicable to those end-to-end teams which go from edge to cloud.
yes.
And you are moving them towards the adaptive topology. And then I would assume the other engineering teams, the engine group, they are preliminary in a resource or some other topology.
No, I would say they are more actually driving towards the delivering. Because they are, if you think about a big industrial machinery, not only from our company, and automation and control is a component of the whole product. And that component is software in nature, while the rest of the product is mechanical. And it's quite common that you have mechanical team working on the mechanic, and then you have software people working on the software. And that software being a component of the bigger product is primarily focusing on delivering.
Sure.
So they are equally transitioning on, I would say, from doing to delivering. While we are, since we are sitting on the overall product for the life cycle, we don't consider our product component, and therefore we have possibility to go more into driving.
Sure, yeah. And I guess, I mean, it's okay to have different topologies for different parts of the product because I guess I would assume the level of flexibility and dynamicism in the environment, in requirements, in the business is different. And I would assume it's much more dynamic and fluid in the software teams than in the mechanical or embedded software. So for that reason, you are focusing primarily on that software teams. Yeah. Probably last question before we wrap up today. So you showed that future state where the teams were super high on the map, even closing the expanding boundary, like learning, and then you showed the snapshot of where you currently are, which is still very impressive comparing to where you had been. But that gap, right? So what do you think are the top roadblocks you guys need to clean, and what's on the way of the teams to actually approach that level?
Two things. One is actually the question that you asked me before. It's about the architecture complexity. How do you deal with actually all this domain? The product becomes more complex, and therefore it takes time for the people to learn really how to operate end to end before the product can be even then mastered more broadly. So there is a lot of, I mean, you can imagine the 190 years of existence in the market means also that we have a lot of legacy, which is quite normal for a company like ours. And then when you are expanding or moving towards this more driving archetype, you are exposing the teams to more end-to-end work and then a broader product, and there is a lot to learn. So what is preventing is an organic time needed for learning, which is perfectly fine, I would say. It's I don't stress about it. We don't need to. By the way, we are talking about safety. It's not only about safety of our product and our customers, it's also about the well-being of our people. So there is an organic time for people to learn. We cannot put them in a position where it burns them out. So that's something that needs to be taken into account. So that's the first, I would say, if you want to call it a roadblock or just a fact of life, that learning takes time. And The other one is the expansion of the product. And if I'm not mistaken, we even discussed about this in some other occasion, that picture that I now represented, where the teams are moving towards the driving part and they are putting a step into, they say, oh, I learned partial part of the business. If the product all of a sudden would increase in size because maybe we acquire another company, or maybe because we decide, let's say, to merge together with other part of our value stream, then all of a sudden the team would actually go a bit lower, because all of a sudden the size of the product grows, and therefore the gap increases. And that part has happened over the past few years for us. So we inherited more scope of work, and that by itself created an additional stretch. So it delayed the learning process, delayed the journeys to move that bubble called teams to be really a driving archetype. And frankly speaking, I believe that that's always going to be the case. The more you have an organization that has the competence, capability, not to know the whole product, but rather to have the mindset to expanding and to learn, the more scope will go to them. So they will continuously go, I'm putting my head into the driving, and then poop, I go back because I get more work because I'm good at that. So for me, the most important thing is not necessarily to achieve the driving, but to build organizational capability where people are happily doing the expanding part that is propelling them towards the driving. I hope I expressed myself in a how do you say, in a understandable way, because it's not about the end journey, it's about the end game, but it's about the journey and the mindset they need to have. Eventually, you'll never be on the top right corner, but you are having the organizational capability and the interest from the people to always try to go there. And that's what I think it's a bit related to, similar to this organizational perfection vision, where you have an unattainable goal, but you build the organizational capability to drive that continuous improvement, to try every single day to move in that direction.
Yeah. Fantastic. Mauro, we just spoke for half an hour and I still have tons of questions, but I think I'm expanding on my scope of questions, right? But I think that's where we'll have to stop for people to also be able to digest this information. I hope so, because you are building learning and improving organizations. I think like if we meet in a year, it will be a different story, a different picture. So, and I'm looking forward to learn from you guys. It's a very special company. It's not just software, it's hardware, it's mechanics, it's everything together. You have many teams, as you said, and you're doing a very interesting deep transformation. I know there are many details that you're not able to share because of this public stream, but I hope one day you'll be able to write your memoirs, how you went up and out of the map with all the team.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm more than happy to join you again, or engage in conversation, panel, whatever, to share our experience, because there is always a good learning from the question. There is always a good learning also from hearing what others are experiencing. So I'm all in for doing that. Alexei, thanks a lot for inviting me.
Thank you so much for the time. All the best and enjoy the Easter holidays.
Yeah, likewise, and to all those from the line. Thank you.